Okay. Good. Is it still morning? Good morning, everybody. I am Norris Howard, Community Manager and Great Lakes Region Lead for Immortals. We are a professional esports organization that's pro gaming for those who are unfamiliar. And to my left is our fearless leader and CEO, Jordan Sherman. We're here to talk to you guys a little bit about the world of esports and how brands and marketers can begin to interface with the gaming community or the multitude of gaming communities and esports. So thank you for having us. And Jordan, we made a big decision as a company to move from the Los Angeles area where most of gaming and esports is to the Great Lakes. Let's talk a little bit about that, why that was important to you, and also your background and how you got here as a CEO of an esports team. That sounds like really fun. Oh, I think we got a dead mic. We should be good now.
Okay, cool. Hey, everybody. Just so I could get at a gauge, how many people here are familiar with esports and gaming, just even like elementary? Okay, sweet. And how many people are marketers that have actively invested or worked in gaming space so far? Okay, cool, awesome. That's more than usual that we see. And I think it's really interesting as a whole. You know, we own and operate professional video game teams. So that means we have people who are paid to play in video games on major stages all across the world. A couple weeks ago in Chicago, League of Legends, which is one of the leagues that we're in, we have one of 10 franchise teams. They sold out the United Center. Our team, unfortunately, didn't qualify. Only the top 3 did. But it was amazing to see everything that was happening at United Center. And then we had a bunch of activations all around the city of Chicago. And I think, you know, even just by that show of hands, you see a lot of people very familiar with it. And you see less people who are actively engaged and doing brand marketing around it. And I actually don't think that's marketers' fault. I think it's esports and the teams and agencies and like the platforms. We have to do a better job of like explaining easy entry points. So when Norris and I were talking about this session, I think what we really wanted to do was not only potentially answer audience questions if you have or willing to take whatever, but provide, you know, concrete examples of different things that we've done here in Detroit and across the Great Lakes area that hopefully will give you a little bit of reference point for like what you can do, because I think this industry has been built up to seem very scary and hard and cynical when actually there's just a ton of opportunity. And I think you can build certain activations that bring value to the community and are really based in terms of like who you are as a brand and not necessarily having to leave that position. A lot of times I see, I mean, let me know what you think. A lot of times I see brands come to us and say, well, we want to get into gaming and esports and we need to hire somebody and do this whole thing and take a year to figure out like what our strategy is. And a lot of times we say, well, you should actually build from the core of who you are and use that as kind of the launch point.
Yeah, and some of the best activations actually you would think are incredibly low lift. I think one of the most poignant examples, although it doesn't involve us, was in the Overwatch League during season 1, where T-Mobile decided to be a title sponsor of an esports league, and people were just happy that money was coming into esports, that organically fans just started cheering T-Mobile in the middle of a match, and you heard it, you know, 120,000 people over a Twitch stream just hear 30,000 people screaming T-Mobile. That is about as good of a brand activation as you can get without having to spend, you know, getting influencers and all this other stuff. Just put their name on it. And so I think when it comes to gamers in particular, as a lifelong gamer myself, we just like to see people who are involved, who want to interface with the community in a organic way and not necessarily turn their brand into a gamer brand, right? That doesn't work for everybody, and that's not necessary for everybody. And so one thing that I definitely want to ask you, Jordan, and I know we talk about this, is that when brands come to us and they have an idea, talk a little bit about that process, because I think a lot of people are a little bit lost on how do brands actually activate. We see that they do, you know, they slap their logo on stuff, but we're also seeing a lot of brands start to be a lot more creative in the gaming space. What are some of the things that brands can begin to do in order to get into these gaming spaces?
Sure. Do we have the presentation or no? I wanted to show one image. This is a video which we'll kind of click through, but this image, I'm gonna go back and forth here a little bit, but this image here is Flow from Progressive. So Progressive is one of our biggest sponsors. They're our entitlement sponsor for League of Legends. We also work with them in Minecraft and in Rocket League. And I took it really as a huge compliment that they would trust Flo from Progressive, who's, you know, in all their commercials and has been around since 2008, to put them in an Immortals jersey and showcase her as a gamer. Now, this isn't like the only thing that they do with Flo. I mean, they're activating across NFL and NBA and college in a multitude of different ways. But I thought it was really interesting to see like them say, okay, we're going to take what we're known for already, kind of tease it with gaming, work with a company that's credible in the space, and then go out and be forward with this type of activation. And I think it's been really interesting to see just a huge Fortune 500 brand feel comfortable doing this with their lead. If we go backwards, let me see if I can figure out how to go backwards here. This is an idea of like the landscape. It's a little bit small, but hopefully you can see. So Immortals, our company, started in 2016 in LA, way before Norris and I were even involved. And what we found in the ecosystem, these other logos are other teams in the esports system. So many of them were based in LA. Why they were all based in LA, I'm not fully sure. I think it's a great place to live, and there's a lot of influencers in Hollywood. And what we found is that there actually was a tremendous market opportunity in the Great Lakes region that no other esports company was looking at. So you can kind of see of the 10 teams that are in our League of Legends league, 6 of them were in LA, 1 was in San Francisco, and we were in LA, so 7 total. So as we announced, this was last year in November, that we wanted to become a 1 of 1 in the Great Lakes region, we had to actually show up and be about it and start activating in the region. So we announced this. We weren't totally sure, you know, what was going to happen, if people would support it. And it was funny, the companies that did. The first company that did was Riot Games. So they're the makers of League of Legends and Valorant. And they said, you know, it's so funny that you guys are thinking about going to the Great Lakes. There's a tremendous amount of gamers that we see in Toronto and Detroit, Cleveland, Chicago, and we have no way of working with them. So could you help us put on an activation that reaches this area? So we came up with this concept called Immortals Invasion, which ran in June here in Detroit. And Norris, do you want to give a little bit of an overview?
Yeah, so essentially, as somebody who was born and raised in Detroit, lifelong gamer, one thing that I hadn't ever experienced was any of these sort of high-end, super involved, high-scale gaming activations that you would see happen in Southern California or New York all the time, whether it would be a meet and greet with a team or career opportunities or any of that stuff. None of it ever came to a city like Detroit. And so what we were able to do in partnership with Riot Games was create a multi-day activation over the course of a weekend in June, where we had a show match between Michigan and Michigan State in a couple of games that got very lively. We also had a number of career opportunity days where we rented out Durfee Innovation Center here in the west side of Detroit, and we brought on a number of speakers from Riot Games, all of which were women and people of color who work in the gaming space for Riot, talking about their experiences, talking about what they did on a day-to-day basis. And we also had a resume day where kids who were interested in working in video games could talk to these professionals and ask them what skills they needed in order to work in the gaming space. That activation still to this day has not repeated from anywhere else. No other team has attempted it. And Riot was very happy with it as an activation, and wants to continue it in other cities across the Great Lakes. And so we're very proud of that activation. And we're also looking to do even more with it, whether it be at college towns or, with smaller scale activations that specifically focus on career, or some that may just focus on the competitive side. But it's still it is something that I think more brands and more marketers should look at as a way to connect, especially with underserved communities, because this is another thing that marketers, I think, really, really have a great opportunity here in terms of DEI and inclusion and all that stuff, is meet gamers, because everybody plays video games, literally everybody. So I'm really excited to share that, and I can't wait to work on the next one.
Yeah, it's cool. So the product is called Immortals Invasion, and as we're posting different videos from it, you see all these people on our Twitter mentions saying, "Invade Windsor, invade Cleveland, like invade Madison," and like that's our plan. Is like we really want to bring value. I mean, the first thing, my background before I was in esports, I worked at Major League Baseball and I worked at the NBA with the LA Clippers, and I never really thought about having. I always, in terms of like sponsorship and branding, obviously it's like the size and the eyeballs and the passion. But when you go into esports, I never really thought about like the value you can bring to the space, because it's new, because it's young, and because a lot of these people, especially in this region, don't have, I mean, just look at the map, like don't have teams or companies talking to them. So when we talk to brands, if I was on the brand side, we were able to spin all that up for Riot, and like for them, like their D&I initiatives happening in Detroit, it's a huge win. And that's what I would be thinking of if I was in branding. Like, how can I work within this market, work with partners, if it's us, if it's somebody else, whoever it is, that helps me push my brand forward in a whole new way. And I think what you're going to find is like a lot of these people, I don't think they are like the typical, what you would think is like a typical gamer. They're actually really smart, hardworking, entrepreneurial, very well versed in computers. Like we had Riot developers at Invasion, and then we had 6th, 7th, and 8th graders coming up and saying, "Oh, I'm building my own video game." And they're like, "Oh, which software?" "I'm using Unity," and like I'm using this and this, like talking through all this. It was incredible, the lingo and the knowledge that they had. Norris is speaking at Digital Inclusion Week tomorrow with Rocket Mortgage, and it's going into his school, and they're doing like a digital scavenger hunt with all these different esports things. The students are really fired up for it, of course, because for them, this is like a really great career opportunity and things they want to get interested in. So that's what I find about this space from the branding perspective, is just there's a tremendous opportunity to do it. It's not like esports in a box. It's not just buying ad space on Twitch or buying stuff on a jersey. We really pride ourselves on trying to get to know the client and like building things out that are specific.
Yeah, and before I want to open it up to questions, just a perfect example is you don't have to look far to find a gaming audience. Literally right over here at Huntington Place, a major gaming tournament is happening this weekend for Smash Brothers, and roughly 15 to 20,000 people are probably going to fall over there over the course of the weekend. And that's a huge opportunity for marketers and for brands to get their brands in front of gamers that are the hardcore. These are the best Smash players in the world in many cases. That'll just be smack dab in the middle of Detroit for a weekend. And so, kind of understanding those landscapes and understanding what's happening even in your own backyard is a perfect way to begin to interface with gamers, because gamers are everywhere. So there's not necessarily a specific place you have to pinpoint. You can literally throw a rock in the air, you'll hit a gamer. So before we kind of step off stage, I do want to open it up to questions for myself or for Jordan, if anybody has any. And if not, that's cool, because it's about to be lunchtime and you can find us eating lunch. Yes.
Yeah, that's a great question. So this slide actually kind of fits to it. So I think a lot of people enter the esports space because they think it's going to be this awesome wave where that they can just kind of ride out and gaming is going to explode and it's going to just all be gravy. And I saw it as really an opportunity to build a business and try something different. So this is like the hub and spoke model that we're eventually building towards. Right now we have full-time gamers in LA, and LA in my opinion, for a young gamer is not the best place to be because it's so big and there's so much happening and they're not on the Lakers or the Clippers. But when we brought our players to college towns, that's where they really thrive because there's already this like young, youthful experience. A lot of these gamers are 18 to 24 to begin with. They don't get to go to college. So what we're doing, like Norris is working with Michigan State, and we're launching a huge broadcast for Wild Rift, which is a mobile game tournament in November. And we're using all Michigan State broadcasters and casters. We're giving them the opportunity to be on live on the stream and kind of showcase their resume. And our long-term vision is hub and spoke model to build different Immortals teams and offices in college towns. So you can picture us with like our League of Legends team in Ann Arbor, our women's Valorant team in East Lansing, a mobile gaming team in Madison. And you couldn't do any of this in traditional sports. The Tigers can't play in Wisconsin or Ohio. They have to play in Comerica Park. And so that openness was really attractive to me to try to like be a part of building something. Meeting people like Norris and I met before. He actually interviewed me for something and then followed me out to my car and was like, I love what you guys are doing for gaming in the Great Lakes. I'd love to come work with you guys. And I was like, that'd be great. Let's do it. And I found that there's so many people in this region that are like super passionate about what we're doing. It's just so early. It's like, it really is the first inning. And that's why we wanted to speak at something like this, because I don't think we can get to where we want to go without regional support and people like believing in our mission and what we're trying to do. We already have a good starting point. But all that to me is really exciting to be able to put your stamp on something. And I found traditional sports to kind of be like, it's going to be there no matter what, if I was involved or not. And this was something that I thought I could bring a lot of value to. Thanks for the question.
Okay, any more questions? Yay, nay? All right, well, thank you guys for having us so much. Like I said, we'll be around for a little bit.